Capitol Report is a production of Senate Media Services.
Debate over a federal mandate for enhanced driver's licenses continues at the Capitol. We'll talk with senators both for and against the law, and the legislative auditor discusses the embattled Minnesota Sports Facility Authority. Stay tuned for this and more on this week's Capitol Report. Welcome to this week's program. I'm Shannon Lurkey. The Senate Judiciary Committee recently heard public testimony on a bill that would bring Minnesota into compliance with the Federal Real ID Act. Here are some highlights from that meeting.
Next year, what is this going to look like? How many of these people are going to be roadblocked or limited in their travels? For them, a $300 airline ticket is very, very expensive. So you can bet that a $110 passport is going to be a significant burden for them. If we don't pass this law or this rule, it's not going to be the road warrior business travelers that are going to be affected. Most of them have their passports. It's not going to be the wealthy who do world traveling. They also have all the documentation they need. But it's going to be our next door neighbors. It's going to be that family that doesn't travel all the time. That senior citizen that has that special person in their life that they want to visit one last time because there's a health crisis or an emergency.
This thing, the driver's license, is a valuable prize. And what's happening now is that the federal government is taking it away from you. It's taking away the authority that you should have over driver licensing and related public policy decisions that the Constitution reserves to the states. But what's happening with Real ID is a different kind of inducement, a form of hostage taking. They're telling you that they're going to threaten to hold up Minnesota's travelers if you don't comply with federal mandates about licensing. Well, I think the best advice in the area of hostage taking is the common sense advice. Don't give in to hostage takers.
Joining me now in the studio is the author of the Senate bill that would make Minnesota Real ID compliant, Senator Eric Pratt. Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
How did we get here? The act was passed in 2005. It's 12 years later, and we're still hung up on this thing. So what's going on?
Well, you're exactly right. The act was passed in 2005, and a number of states, not just Minnesota, had a problem with the federal government mandates. And also just a lot of uncertainty around what was being asked for. So Minnesota, along with several other states, passed bans prohibiting their state departments from investigating or implementing a Real ID. Now, as time went on, many of these states repealed those bans as more information came out from the federal government. Minnesota is one of the last ones to repeal the ban. So in 2016, we repealed the ban that allowed the department to at least evaluate what would be needed. Now we're looking at, now that we know what would be needed in order to implement a Real ID, now we're trying to actually get it implemented.
In general, people are concerned about their ability to fly and travel freely across the country. But why does the federal government need access to all of this information?
Well, it's not about having access to the information. It's about making sure that the credential that you're presenting is in fact valid and meets certain standards. They want to know that if you're flying, if you're entering a military facility, if you're entering a federal building, including the White House, that the credentials used to get the ID are credible, because there's one of the problems that the 9/11 Commission found was that states varied in how they validated someone's identification, and they also said that they should be able to set the standards for what they're willing to accept where they have jurisdiction. So they have jurisdiction on whether you enter a military facility. They have jurisdiction on how you enter federal buildings, and they have jurisdiction over commercial air flight.
One testifier in last week's committee hearing compared complying with Real ID mandates as similar to giving in to hostage takers. Do you believe that the loss of privacy and the concerns about government overreach are compelling enough reasons to be against this legislation?
Well, I think there are some concerns, but I think, first of all, we have to recognize that, in my opinion, we're not giving up a significant amount of information. We're not giving up a significant amount of privacy. The Department of Vehicle Services testified that we're not passing any information to a central database. We're simply going out to other states and seeing if another Real ID exists in one of those states, because by federal statute, you can only own one real ID. So if, for example, someone comes up from Iowa, then we would also ping and didn't present their real ID when they were applying for a new Minnesota license, we would want to know that Iowa had that and that it was closed before we issued our credential.
So basically preventing people from having multiple identifications. Okay.
For our immigrant population, those with green cards here on legal status, there's a requirement that we validate that legal status with Homeland Security. I think that's a fairly reasonable ask. And then finally, we're already providing information to other states. When we revoke someone's driving privileges, that's available to any other state, so that someone can't go to Wisconsin or Iowa and get a new driver's license when they've had their privileges revoked here. So we're not passing off any information. Nobody else is housing any information. We're just simply doing checks against other databases to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the identification.
Well, and I think that's one of the areas that Senator Limmer is concerned about, because in terms of the protection of private data, it's only as strong as, he said to me, its weakest link. So if we are sharing information all around the nation and another state isn't as secure as our state, then this data is still available and there could be breaches. So how do you respond to that concern?
Well, I mean, first of all, you think about the information that's being passed. It's just the information that's on the front of your driver's license. We're just trying to make sure that you don't have another ID in another state. They shouldn't be housing our information. And we're not getting a lot of information back unless we get a hit. So it's just a yes or no response the first time. So minimal information is really transmitting in these verification steps.
Okay. When the bill was before the Judiciary Committee, there was a lengthy debate that came up about the data surrounding, I think it had to do with the firearm safety hunter education, because Minnesota driver's licenses will have that information on them. How does that translate to Real ID? And are there concerns that, people's information about whether they have a license to carry or anything like that would be transmitted federally?
Well, I think what we would want to do is protect, to Senator Limmer's point, we want to protect that data under our state rules and regulations. We don't want that to become available to the federal government. So you could still have your hunter safety on your driver's license, but in the bill that I've got, the Department of Public Safety would not be able to share that information with the federal government or any other state. That would be classified under our current data privacy rules, which makes it private.
So there's some information that everybody will have access to, which is basically what you can see on your license. And anything more private than that is protected.
The other thing we've done in this bill is, at the date of enactment, all the data sharing is locked in. And so if there are any changes from the federal government where they want more data, that has to come back to the legislature for our approval. Okay. And so we won't allow the department to just automatically give any new data without coming through the legislature. I've been very sensitive to the information that we are sharing, and to make sure that we are protecting residents' privacy.
One last question. The House version of the bill has a controversial part that would codify that illegal immigrants cannot get driver's licenses. So if the bill gets to conference committee, how do you think that's going to go down?
Well, I think we're going to have to wait to get to conference committee. Certainly, I've been talking with the Speaker and the House author as we were going through the process. I think everybody realizes that this was the issue that got us hung up in 2016. And the Senate was a little more liberal than we are today in their rulemaking authority, and the House was unwilling to move. I think what I've been trying to tell the House is we should treat immigration and we should treat Real ID as two separate issues. And so my goal is to make sure that any laws and regulations regarding driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants will be the same after the bill as they are today.
Senator Pratt, I want to thank you so much for coming today.
Appreciate it.
My next guest has been a longtime critic of compliance with federal Real ID legislation. Joining me in the studio is Senator Warren Limmer. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Most people think that Real ID is simply about getting on an airplane, but you say it's much more than that. So what are your concerns?
Well, the proponents have made it into that. That's the consequence if we do not go forward. But let's look at the underlying language. It was passed by Congress in 2004 in the dead of night. There was no recorded vote, no committee scrutiny on it. Amendment out of the blue. It got into a military appropriation bill, and that's how we got stuck with it. This was motivated by vendors and lobbyists that wanted a national ID card for the last 20 years, and they finally had their opportunity to slip this bill in without all the scrutiny that it really takes. Now every state is stuck with it, but what are we going to buy into? We give up all of our authority to change or expand the use of that card for any and all purposes, and it's given, Congress gave that authority to the Homeland Security Director. Only he can expand the purposes and use of that card. Is it going to be used to scan for purchases? Are we going to be taxed according to the scanning when we buy gasoline, and then we can tax ourselves due to the pollution we create? Like I said, is it going to be used for firearm purchases? How much ammunition you buy? What kind of caliber do you have? Federal government will finally have the list of all the gun owners in this country. Right now, it's retained by the state. So a lot of questions, a lot of open-ended authorities, and I don't think most people know what they're really getting into. All they care about is the convenience of getting on an airplane.
Well, so Minnesota is among the slowest to adopt this measure. Other states did share your concerns, and over time, a lot of the concerns have sort of been alleviated. For example, according to MinnPost, no major national database has yet been set up. So, I mean, you're talking about concerns of there being a national database that they can reach in and find, but that's not actually the case yet.
It never was designed to have a national database. Each state would hold information on whatever the Homeland Security Director says they should hold, and then government employees from state to state can inter-network around into other states. And there's nothing that prohibits the federal government from making a data sharing contract with states either. So they can legitimately say, we will not hold the data. Why would they want to hold the data and go through all of that expense when they are making every state comply with spending money for every database in every state? So it's kind of a false red herring when you hear that there's a national database. There is none, but there is a hub to intercede, to interact with other states. Other employees can potentially grab information from our state. We're a highly protective state when it comes to our citizens' privacy. Other states do not have that. What happens when that information is shared with another state and they abuse it? We cannot enforce our state law in a different state. So I think it makes a huge difference of the security of data that our citizens have come to enjoy in the state of Minnesota. It may not be that way in the near future.
Well, speaking of data security, many Americans routinely give up all kinds of data, cell phone use and shopping and convenience.
Yeah.
Is the government less trustworthy than private business?
You know, I was talking with Jim Harper from formerly of some of the more conservative think tanks around.
Yeah, he's from Washington, D.C. Yeah.
And he and I were talking about it, and I said, what's the connection? He said, and we were talking, and we came to the conclusion that the Real ID system, the database that other states are going to collect on its citizens, is kind of the one central technological glue that all these other informations can be plugged into. And if that's the case, then this is far beyond any of our imaginations of what it could be abused for. And all sorts of information, not only your motor vehicle driver license, perhaps your medical records can be attached to that. All sorts of things, purchases and certain products that the government wants to keep an eye on. How much alcohol do you buy? How much tobacco do you buy? You know, are you being taxed accordingly to the sin tax that we should collect on you? All sorts of things, but the Real ID technology is now going to be carried in your pocket in your driver license form. It just has a veneer of a state driver license image on it, but the card itself will begin to hold more and more information. Eventually, we fear that the magnetic strip will be replaced with an RFID chip to hold even more information on you.
So you're saying this is a slippery slope?
It's a definite, and it's the technological infrastructure to put it all together.
In the most recent judiciary hearing, there were testimony from businesses and business groups saying that noncompliance is already hurting business in the state. What do you say to those concerns?
I don't know how it can be hurting any business when we don't require it in the state right now. The airlines are still flying. People are still coming and going. Businesses still are starting up businesses, and some are leaving, not for real ID purposes. So I find that to be a really hard stretch to imagine that people are concerned with it. After all, the federal government has given one of its 12th or 13th extensions on the Real ID program now. So it's illegal to be exactly where we are.
As you talk with colleagues in the Senate, are there others who share your concerns? And what do you think happens if we still continue not to pass Real ID legislation?
There are others that share my concerns. They're very concerned about how far does this technology go. And we can't pull the reins back on it once we sign the contract with Homeland Security. That director now is in charge. Congress is not in charge. They ceded that authority over to the director. That means your vote in Congress, your representative vote on this area of governing is no longer representing you. It's now in the hands of a political appointee as a director or coming from or through the Homeland Security Office, which is a division not of the Justice Department, that's a division of the White House. Mm-hmm. So it may just be a little more politically motivated than policy made. And so I'm very concerned about that, and irregardless of whoever would be president.
Senator Limmer, we have to stop now, but I want to thank you so much for your time today.
You bet. Thank you.
This week at the Capitol, Governor Dayton announced the Clean Drinking Water Starts With Me poster contest to increase awareness of water quality for students in kindergarten through high school.
The theme of this is Clean Water Begins With Me, and to instill that consciousness in children of all ages, something that they will then carry through into adulthood, and they'll hopefully challenge some of the adults in their lives to what they're doing to improve water quality.
Our hope is to inspire and engage a generation of youth who will be the leaders that will assure that we all have clean drinking water for future generations.
We know that water is important for health. It's important for your physical health, but it's certainly important for our economic health. It's important for businesses in our community, because if we didn't have clean water, we wouldn't be healthy ourselves, we wouldn't be able to live together in communities, and we wouldn't have businesses thrive.
On Wednesday, undergraduate students from Minnesota's private colleges showcased their research projects addressing a range of topics from Russian history to scientific research.
We had done research and found that there were some chemicals that had a similar backbone structure, and we wanted to modify those to increase inhibitory properties of a transporter that provides energy for the tumors. And so by limiting the energy that the tumor can produce, we can stop the growth and metastasis of that tumor.
Our goal was to create a compound or a series of compounds that may do just what Lisa said, cut off the energy supply to late-stage breast cancer tumors specifically, but hopefully it will be broadened to other cancers as well.
Members of the public, families, and lawmakers had the opportunity to speak with these young scholars.
I learned a lot, to be honest with you. A lot of it I didn't understand because it's so advanced. It's incredible the types of things that these students are studying, but I absolutely wanted to be here to support the students from St. Mary's University as well as the other private colleges and universities throughout the state.
And when we're in session, we're literally here from 7 a.m. till 7, 8, 9, 10 p.m. And so we don't literally get out and to visit with people in the schools. And so this is a way to bring the schools here. And then especially in this renovated Capitol building, it's a beautiful place. And so I hope they have time while they're here to literally go and tour the Capitol.
Also on Wednesday, Lieutenant Governor Smith, lawmakers, and victims of wage theft rallied support for legislation that would legally define wage theft and provide funding to enforce it.
That same man or woman goes to work every day, but what happens instead is the contract is broken, and it happens in literally hundreds of different ways.
When a person works, I don't care whether you're a high-paid worker or a low-paid worker, if you work for a living, You should get paid.
It's a pretty well-known fact that the 1% out there does exist. They skirt laws in order to improve their bottom line. They refuse to pay overtime. Sometimes they pay cash. Other times they find other legal ways to get around properly compensating their employees. It's obviously bad for workers, but it's also bad for business, and it's bad for the state of Minnesota.
Last year, the Star Tribune published an article disclosing that U.S. Bank Stadium executives who controlled 2 luxury suites on taxpayers' behalf provided free access to those suites to friends and family. The article prompted Jim Nobles, the legislative auditor, to conduct a special review, and he now joins me in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you.
What raised red flags for you after reading that Star Tribune article?
What you just said, and that the article said that the officials, public officials, had given free tickets to families and friends. That was the red flag, or the bell that went off, that's a problem. And it's a problem that I, as legislative auditor, have to address.
Your report concludes that commissioners and executive director did not violate a law by giving free tickets to friends and family, but did violate a core ethical principle. So what does that mean?
Well, there were 2 laws that could have applied. One is the Code of Conduct for employees in the executive branch. It's the sort of standard code that everybody in the executive branch has to follow, and I think it really articulates, frankly, the core ethical principle that all public officials should follow, and it is the one we just referred to. You do not use a public position to obtain public resources for your family and friends. It's just the core principle. You can't take the laptop home and give it to your family to use for personal business. You can't take the state car and drive it for personal errands and that sort of thing. I mean, it's just what we live by and expect public employees to live by every day.
But they were somehow exempt from following.
They were exempt,
right?
And so they were exempt from that particular provision, which is in Minnesota statutes. They were also exempt from another provision of law that could have applied, which is called the gift law, which basically says that if you are a lobbyist or a lobbyist principal is basically an organization that hires a lobbyist, you cannot give a gift of a certain value, and certainly these seats would have met that threshold. You cannot give a gift, in this case free tickets to the stadium suites, to a public official, and they did that. There were a number of public officials who they gave these tickets to. So that would have violated the gift law, but again, because of the way the law is written, the way the authority was established in statute, it does not apply to the authority. So I would say, you know, they kind of escaped a violation on some technical grounds.
The Minnesota Sports Facilities Authority said it needs 2 stadium suites to market the stadium, and yet they have a contract with the Stadium and Convention Center Management, Marketing, and Booking Company. Is this redundant?
Well, it seems redundant to, I think, a lot of people that SMG, the company, and it is a highly respected worldwide company that manages similar kinds of stadiums and other kinds of convention centers. This is their business. They know it well. They're professionals. And in fact, SMG appointed a general manager for the U.S. Bank Stadium as part of that contract, and they have a significant number of employees who are working every day marketing and managing the U.S. Bank facility. So do we need others on the board of the Sports Authority, to be doing similar things? Well, we probably need a public organization like the authority to be involved to some degree. Do they need to be involved full-time with, you know,
with every event and
with every event and with a chair that's full-time and an executive director that's full-time? That's a question the legislature needs to look at. We didn't directly address that question, but we certainly called attention to the fact that SMG is involved. In fact, in our report, we quote the chair, Michelle Kelm-Helgen, as saying they hired SMG specifically because of their deep experience managing and marketing these kinds of facilities.
One recommendation is that the legislature, quote, consider enactment of laws to control the use of complimentary tickets at all sports and entertainment facilities built with public money. Are other venues granting similar perks to their boards and commissions?
It's a mix, and we did not do a comprehensive assessment, but we did call and talk to people in other venues around the Twin Cities, because that's where, not all of them, but a lot of them are. And there's a variety of practices and policies. Some, for example, at Target Center, which is owned and operated by the city of Minneapolis, they said no. We do not provide complimentary tickets. That the mayor wants to go to see an event, a game, she buys the ticket. At Target Field, where the Twins play, it's very different. They allow their commissioners to have access to a suite, to tickets, free tickets, and they don't really have any restrictions on their use. And it's our understanding, by their acknowledgement, that they do on occasion bring in family and friends. So it's a mix, and you've often heard the Sports Authority refer to the dome practices at the former Metrodome as being one of the reasons why they continued that practice at the new facility. And so I do think it's time for the legislature to address this issue. And we did recommend that they address it uniformly across all of the facilities that are built and operated with public money. I don't see the justification for putting a policy on one and not the others.
According to your analysis, 30% of the tickets were used appropriately. 45% of the tickets were used for friends and family, and 10% of the ticket users had a questionable purpose. The report states that the authorities' claim that it needs 2 suites rather than 1 is not supported by facts or logic. So what is the remedy? What do you recommend happen next?
Well, there could be a variety of things. One of the things we suggest is that the legislature authorize some charitable use. And again, it's interesting that this was done back at the Metrodome. And even though the current Sports Authority officials say, well, we copied what they did at the Metrodome, and that's why we were giving tickets to family and friends, when we asked them, well, why aren't you giving some tickets through a charitable kind of an organization, one way or the other, either directly or indirectly through a nonprofit organization, their legal counsel said that would not be a public purpose, which we found a little baffling. Our follow-up question to him was, and giving tickets to family and friends is a public purpose? To which he did not answer. So there are a variety of things that could be done, and I know legislators are working on that. There are bills that would do a variety of things to address the question of whether or not the authority really needs 2 suites.
Mr. Nobles, that's all the time we have today. I want to thank you so much for coming.
Well, thank you.
Join us again next week as we delve into more topics affecting Minnesotans. I'm Shannon Lurkey, and on behalf of all of us at Senate Media Services, thanks for watching.